So now we're going to do our covering. So what I'm going to do, or at least I'm going to attempt to do, is I'm going to try to use one piece of paper for both sides so that they're matching. So I have, I'll have 2 pages here, and I will use, sort of a cohesive piece to put together. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to measure I'm sorry, I know the length that I want, the height that I want is 7 inches, but I am going to take that back just a little bit. So I'm going to do probably 6 7/8 inches tall on a piece of paper, just so I have a little bit of a border. I don't want to have to worry about my paper sticking out at the top or the bottom once I get it cut down. And then what I'm going to do, so let me go ahead and do that first. And I think I may cut the bottom of this one off, because around the Christmas tree I can have right there in the top. So I want the bottom of that cut off. I'm going to do about 6 7/8 here. So it's going to be just a teeny bit smaller than what length I have here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure each side, giving myself a little bit of a border. I'm going to use my pencil. And then I'm just going to make a mark there. So I know my first cut, I want to go right there. I'm going to cut this down. And then you can see this piece will fit on here nicely, and I'll still have my pocket open. And then I'm going to cut my second piece down to fit the envelope side. So I'm just going to make a little border. And now these, because I know the front of the envelopes are all the same size, I could just measure that once and then know how much I'll need. And I could probably do this over here too. So let's cut that down and see what that looks like. Let's check it out. Okay, so you can see now when I put my 2 sides together, I'll kind of have a sort of a cohesive look about the page. And I like the way that's going to look. So I'm just going to look at each piece here. So this one is about almost pretty exactly 3.5 inches wide. So this side's 3.5 inches wide, and this guy looks like 2 7/8 wide. So those are probably, and maybe what I'll do is I'll make myself a little note here. Find some scrap paper. So we almost got wet. 2 7/8 inches, and then we had 3.5 inches, just so I don't forget. So that's our full page going across here. All right. So it looks like I'm not going to be able to, I was thinking maybe I would be able to get 2 pages from one sheet of paper, but with my only 11 inches wide, I'm not going to be able to do that. So this is going to end up being bigger than that. It's going to be like 6 3/8 or something like that for one side. So I'm definitely not going to be able to do 2 on one page there. Yeah, so we have 6 3/8, something like that. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to take each of the papers that I've cut out, and I'm going to cut them down to my 6 7/8 high, and then I'm going to start cutting over for each one of the pages. So I may have some spots where I can use 2 different ones. So I could maybe use this one again, with with one that has a little bit more detail on it. Let me see if I can find the one that matches this one. So like I could do, this side with the Christmas tree over on one side or something like that. So that's kind of my plan. And I'm hoping that I think I have 10 pages printed out. So I'm hoping I have enough to sort of match everything as I go to do my 15 pages in here. So I have one of them cut, and I'm just going to keep these together. And then as I go, I'm just going to layer them. So let me kind of show you what I'm going to do here. So this one, I'm trying to decide if I should cut off the top or the bottom. I think I might cut the top off of this one. Let me see how much that'll take off. So if I put it to my 6 7/8, yeah, I think that'll be okay. I might use these strips for something else. I don't know yet. But right now they're not going to fit into what I'm doing, so I'm not going to worry about that. So now I'm going to I'm going to have this be one page, and then I'll use this with my leftover from the other page for another page, if that makes sense. So let me cut these down and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to cut this one down to my 2 7/8. 2 7/8. And then I'm going to cut my 3.5 inch down. So this is another left side, right side page. And you can see I have another around the Christmas tree. And I'll probably, you know, space these out in different places of the journal so they're not, all the matching ones aren't in a row. But I'm just going to cut everything down. So I'm just going to kind of put them like that, all my different pages, so that I have them ready to go. And then I have these two that match, but, you know, aren't from the same page. So I can do my, I can cut my 3.5 maybe from this one, and then I'll have most of the Christmas tree on it, which I like, as this side. And then this one I'll cut down to my 2 7/8, and that'll be my matching flap side. So yes, I think that's going to work out just kind of the way that I want it to. So that's my third page there, and I'm going to continue doing that with all of these pages until I have them all cut out and hopefully enough pages for this to go. So I'm going to speed this up as I cut, and we'll get going on this. And actually, before I let you go, so now I just was doing this one, and each way when I cut it off at 7 or 6 7/8 inches, I don't like where it's cutting, because like I want to use the whole butterfly, or I want to use the whole, you know, Christmas greeting down here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little bit off of the bottom and a little bit off the top. And actually I'm going to do the top first, and I'm just eyeballing this. I'm not measuring, but I'm just going to have it go right to the top of the butterfly so that I don't cut off any of him. And then I'm going to try my 6 7/8 and see if I can get a little bit better. Yep, that's much better. So before, if I was cutting off the bottom, it was almost cutting off my postcard on here. But now that I've cut a little bit off the top, I have a little bit more room at the bottom, and it'll just cut off some of these flowers, which is okay, but I'll still have, you know, the bulk of everything here. So just my thought process, I'm kind of letting you in on. So in this one too, I just want to double check. If I do 2 7/8, I'm just going to check where it's going to cut off. And this I'm totally fine with. There's a little bit of the flower cut off, but because this is going to be a full page together, I'm going to do my 3.5 here. You can see that these two, when I put them together, the flower that was cut off on this side is actually coming over to the other side. So I like the way that that's coming together. So that's another page there that I'll put aside, and then I'll save this probably for you know, this plain page once I get going. So I'm going to keep going and cutting all these off and getting them all set up for pages, and then we'll be right back. Okay, I have all my page covers ready to go. And now before I actually put anything on, I'm just, because I ended up cutting a lot of the same ones together, I'm just going to put them in the order that I want so that I don't end up putting, you know, two of the same pattern next to each other. So let's see, I'm just gonna kind of spread them out a little bit so I know like these two are the same. These two are the same. Those three are the same. Actually, these three are the same. That one's the same, that one's the same, that one's the same, and this one's the same. Okay, so I kind of have my different patterns all together here, and now I can just pick and choose to put them in order. So I'm just going to take this one maybe as my, and actually, where was the one that we did first? Because I liked the around the Christmas tree, and I have two of those. So I think the first, my very first page, I'm going to use this one, which has the around the Christmas tree on it. And then I'm just going to kind of go around and, you know, pick out different ones to go together. So this will be number 2. And then I'll have this one as number 3. And maybe this one is number 4. This one as 5. And so I'm just going to keep going like this and putting them all wherever I want them here. Okay, pages are all in order. So now I can just easily lift them off here and cover them here. So all I'm going to do for covering is, actually before I do that, I'm also going to round corners. So on the envelope pieces, I don't necessarily have to because they do go all the way up. I don't have to round those off. But for the ones that I'm doing that is a tuck spot, I definitely want to round those corners so that they kind of match the tuck spot. So you could round just one corner at the top, or you can round them both, you know, whatever your personal preference or style tells you to do. So like for this one, because this page comes all the way down to the bottom, even though there's a rounded edge here, I could leave this straight if I wanted to. But I think I'm going to go ahead and round them. Well, it didn't seem to, there we go, cut very good. So you can see now I have just like a little matching piece here. My corners are all nice and matching. So that's probably what I'm going to do. I may even round the corners of the envelope ones because you can still see the rounded corners even though it's a full pocket. You can still see those corners. So I think I may just go ahead and round everything. So if I round the small side, it'll be matching there, and then the right hand side, I don't need to round anything, it'll just go right on there. So I'll probably do that as I go, and then I'm going to just use my glue stick and my little scrap pad here, and all I'm going to do is cover this fully on both the sides, and then it's easier for me to turn it this way to see. But then I'm just going to put it down, make sure I have my little bit of a border as best I can. Envelopes aren't perfect, so my very measured cuts may not be exactly perfect either. Go ahead and turn this so this one doesn't get sticky. And we'll do the same thing over here, and I'll just show you one full spread before I turn on the speed up camera. Same thing, I'm going to turn this way, make sure I have myself a little border, and just be sure you don't glue on top of your center crease there, your center fold, because you don't want to you know, mess up the way the book folds. So this is how each page basically is going to look. So you can see I have a nice cohesive page there, but I have a pocket where I can put things here if I want to. I could do some collage over here. I could even do some journaling over here if I wanted to as well. So as I go through, I'm going to do the same thing for the whole journal here. And you can see now that I had with the distress over everything, I don't even have to worry about, you know, doing that anymore. It's all ready to go for me to put everything on. So I'm just going to go ahead and start gluing everything down throughout the whole journal. All right, I have all of my pages covered and I'm really loving the way it's turning out so far. So now we can start working on our cover. So we left the back and the front plain, and to strengthen the cover, we're going to use some packaging. Now I had another piece of packaging, but I think that one, there wasn't enough to make two sides, and since I need to do both sides for the cover, I'm just going to use this tissue box for making the front and back covers. Now I am going to use my cutter, and I would like to make them, these pieces, the size of my front and back. But I will say that it's okay if it's a little bit smaller width-wise. So you definitely want to try to get it about the same for the height, but width-wise, it's okay if it's, you know, a little bit shorter on one side, because we're going to be covering with fabric, and when we do that, it'll be wrapped around and you won't see it anyway. So I'm going to, whenever I cut with my cutter and I use cardboard, I always, if I can, pull my good cutter off and use an old blade or a cardboard blade that I've set aside just for this type of thing, so I don't dull down that one. So I'll start by just cutting some of these edges off, and making it easier to fit into the cutter itself. I'm going to just take these flaps off, and now I'm probably going to make it so it's not real square, but we'll just have to square things up as we go. I'm going to just move this out of the way, and I think this will be enough for my two pieces. So I'm first going to cut down on the fold here, since that seems like a logical place to start. I'm just going to make sure I get a nice good edge. And since this one is straight, now I'm just going to straighten up one of the other edges So I have two straight edges to kind of measure things from. So now this is going to be my top, and I want it to be 7 inches tall. I know that. And now it was, I believe we said 3.5 inches. And as you can see, this side piece with this little flap here is a little bit, is going to be a little bit less than the front or on the back. So I think I'm still going to use this piece. I think I can still salvage it, even though it's going to be a little bit small. And I am just going to cut it on that other crease, because when I use it for the back piece, it'll still add the sturdiness that I want, but it will, you know, it's not going to just go right to the edge, and that's okay. So that's kind of how this piece is going to go on. So it fits top and bottom very good. And then the sides a little bit shorter, and that's okay. Like I said, our spine is there and we don't want to hinder that anyway. And so now this piece, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to start with this edge that I cut down. And actually I may, because I left most of the fold on this side. So I think I'm going to try to cut that off because it was a little bit bumpy. So once again, I have my one straight edge, so I'm going to straighten this up, give myself 2 straight edges, and now we can measure our 7 inch. And then on the front here, I think I'm gonna, instead of just automatically cutting it down to the 3.5 inches that I know it is, I'm going to look for my pencil. And I actually put it away. How about that? That doesn't happen that often. And then what I'm going to do is for my front, I'm going to measure where I want it. So I have it even here, and I'm just going to move it down just a teeny bit so that I can mark where I want the edge. So once again, I want to be sure I'm not hindering the spine. So I do want to maybe come in just a little bit from where the edge of that envelope is, so that I'm not causing the spine to be a problem. And when I put this on my cutter, you can see actually this is just about 3.5 inches. So this one should fit pretty good in here, top and bottom. And then you can see I have some room for the spine. So that is good. So now I have my front and back cover pieces, and we can get started on that. Okay, I got my fabric out, and I was going to use this green fabric here, but I've just found this pattern here, and it has some holly on there, and it looks like some pine leaves and some snowflakes. And so I thought this kind of went with the Christmas bounty theme that I have going on a little bit better. So I think I'm going to use this instead. So what I'm going to do, and if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I like torn fabric. So I'm probably going to tear the piece that I want for my cover. And once again, I'm probably going to add something else to the front, but I just want the fabric to, you know, cover up my reinforcement pieces and the spine, and then we'll do something else on the front there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up. It looks like I've already torn some or cut some out of here. So I'm going to start by tearing myself. Now my spine is maybe a 1/2 inch, a little bit smaller, but as I start adding things, it'll probably get a little bit bigger. So I know that I just need, you know, at the most, probably 3/4 of an inch to cover this whole thing. So I know I'll be good if I start tearing here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself my first edge down here at the bottom. And I am going to try to leave just a teeny bit at the bottom to hang over. And I'm going to tear this down a little bit so I get to the, I know I'll have enough length here. So my hopes is that I'm actually tearing straight, because sometimes you can tear on the diagonal, and I don't want that to happen, even though I've done it before. So I'm going to try to give myself, I want to cut as close to the top as I can, but to sort of be sure that I'm not tearing diagonally, I am going to give myself just like maybe an 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch on top as my first tear mark. Now it's hard to tear in small pieces, so you want to try to get that part exact if you can. You can see this does look like it is a little bit diagonal, but maybe I can just sort of, it may have done that just because of the tearing that I was doing. So I have to tear 2 edges, and let's see how that's working out. Yeah, I think that works great, actually. So because this was partially cut and partially torn, I am going to sort of just tear a new edge here. And these will be good for scraps, so I'll keep my little tear-offs there. But that has a nice torn edge to it. I like that. Pull some of those stringers off. Okay, so then what's going to happen is this is going to be about there, and you can see that it isn't quite even, but once again, I'm okay with that. So I'm going to let my edge hang over just a little bit, and I'm going to wait to tear the other edge, because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adhering it before I tear it off, so that I know I'm getting, you know, just the right amount that I want. So before I do anything there, I'm going to glue these down. And I think because I have, you know, this purple and stuff here, actually first thing I want to do is just make sure that doesn't show through, which it totally does. So I don't think I want the purple to be up. So I do need to be really sure that I glue this on just right, so that when I open this up, you don't see the purple sticking out. So if you're even close and you're over just a little bit, you may want to cut off a little bit of the height to be sure that you don't go over and see any patterns that you might have. Now, if your, you know, cardboard is plain, you don't have to worry about that, obviously. Or if your fabric is such that it doesn't show through, you don't have to do this. You could just do it the other way. But since mine doesn't work that way, I'm going to glue it down and just be sure I don't have anything hanging off the edges. So now I'm just going to put my glue all over my envelope, getting up to the edge, pretty close. And I know this is going to be a little bit short, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, before I glue anything down, well, actually for the cardboard it doesn't really matter, but I am going to just kind of smooth out the edges a little bit, so that I can be sure from edge to edge I'm getting this on there, you know, straight and good. That makes sense. Okay, I'm pushing that down. I'm going to open it up. You could use a bone folder or a roller here if you want to. And we want to be sure this is good and dry before we do put any fabric on it. I'm going to turn it over and do the back side as well. And I'm just going to verify that we can do the same thing here, that I don't need to cut anything down. And this one actually looks like I may have a little tiny bit that's sticking out. So I am going to try to cut off just a little bit so that I don't have to worry about that. I know my width is okay, but my height, I want to be sure that's better. So I'm not gonna be showing anything over there. And we'll do the same thing over here. Glue the entire side down and then put our cardboard on. And hopefully you're a better shot with the glue than I am, because I do think I got some on the page beneath, and you definitely don't want to do that. I think I may put this in here so that I don't get myself messed up. And then I'm going to, once again, smooth down a little bit, make sure my edges have some good glue on there. And actually I see a little bit of the fold, so I'm going to put it this way. I think that might work a little bit better for me. Make sure I'm not showing any pattern underneath, which I am not. And I don't think I got glue all the way to the edge of this side, so I am going to go back in right here and make sure I get some good glue down in there. And to make sure it's dried and dries flat, I think I'm just going to take a book and put it on top. I have this nice heavy book here. I'm going to put this on top to make sure that everything stays attached. And then we'll come back and we'll start putting the fabric on.